This episode of Deep in the Weeds is proudly supported by Olsen Salt, Australia's oldest family-owned salt company.
This for me is now this is what we've been training for. This is what we've been travelling for. This is what we've been giving up our time for. This is what the compromises have been for. And Woodcut for me it's just the dream restaurant.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. In part one, Ross Lusted took us on a journey through his career from South Africa to Australia and all over the globe. Today, he tells us about the challenges of running a fine dining restaurant with the Bridge Room and how its success led to what may be the defining moment in his career, Woodcut Restaurant. Ross, you've told us about your career all around the globe, but how did the Bridge Room come about?
So I'd always loved that building in Bridge Street, 44 Bridge Street. It was an Art Deco building. It reminded me of a Edward Hopper painting that I'd always loved called Nighthawks. It's sort of got these windows that wrap around, and at night it just glowed. And we came back to Sydney and poured a shitload of money into a little restaurant on the corner of Bridge Street and Young Street with Leon Fink. And, Leon was for me a bit like Adrian, incredibly committed to, and Leon's not a restaurateur. Well, he is, but he's also had 4 other professions. He's a property developer, he's a racehorse owner. He comes from a family who sold textiles. And he's Jewish, and I don't know, but I seem to have a lot of Jewish people in my life, and I find them very grounded and very giving and very loyal. And Leon and I and Sonny just had this fantastic relationship. He's hard, but so generous and so fair and so like-minded, and we had people like Peter Gilmore and Lennox Hasty was there at the time, and there was just this, I don't know, it felt really right. And so we opened this little restaurant called the Bridge Room. I was obsessed with cooking on charcoal, and everywhere it reminded me of my childhood in South Africa, my time in Indonesia, cooking over charcoal, in Japan, Croatia, Montenegro, the US. So the underlying thing for me was I don't have a cuisine. People say, what kind of food do you cook? And it might sound cliche, but it's memories. It's food of my travel. It's stuff that I've eaten somewhere that I go, that was a clever idea. And then you mold it into something else. And I think that's what the Bridge Room was. I needed to draw a line under that that angst in my that was just in the back of my head saying, are you really good enough to do that, to own your own restaurant, to be I'd worked for Neil Perry, for David Thompson, I'd done other things, but it was never your name on the front of the door. And so it was something I needed to do. It was burning a hole, and so we did it. And we kicked a few goals at the Bridge Room.
Well, you kicked a couple of goals. You won Chef of the Year, 3 hats. The string of accolades is longer than I can even consider. What's your memories of Bridge Room, and how important was it in the changes that you've had to move on to Woodcut?
There was a time when there was food and everything I understood about food and cooking, and then I stopped cooking for 12 years, and in that time Il Bulli, Ferran Adria had happened, Spain was going on a trajectory, Heston Blumenthal had happened, There was a lot that was happening in Sydney. There was Martin Ben, obviously Peter Gilmore. There was obviously the generation, let's say before that, Neil, Yanni. I know I'm forgetting a lot, but Greg Doyle has always been a mentor. Tetsuya. I remember always being able to talk to Greg. Never worked with Greg. He was just always someone I could pick up the phone to. There's friends like Simon Johnson, who always Sussman. And, you know, everyone supports you, but it's almost irrelevant. You know, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much support you have to do it yourself. And when we opened the doors, I absolutely shit myself because it was everything. It was all the money that we had made living overseas and working overseas and sacrificing. Because you're away from your family, you're doing amazing things, but don't get me wrong, you are away from your family. And you also sometimes you get a bit frustrated. So you say, fuck it, let's just go to New York, and you blow a whole lot of money because you just have been living in the desert for 6 months. You know, so you sort of now, we had this responsibility. First time I'd ever owned my own business. And I thought we'd just open a little restaurant, I'd hire a chef, and I'd go off and do these other things that I wanted to do. And like work on hotel development and paint and all that sort of stuff. And the Bridge Room sort of became all consuming, but it was the time that I've never been more creative in my life.
Wow.
But there was all this molecular shit that I didn't understand any of it. And so I was just cooking like I knew how to cook, but I'd never heard of xanthan gum and all this other, you know, agar-agar and all these. So I suddenly had to spend all my time off researching and reading but then thinking, well, that's getting off track. This is about cooking on charcoal and smoke and ash and all those things. I worked with Alex Olson because I wanted to create this smoked salt that I'd seen in Dubrovnik. And it wasn't actually smoked salt. They just kept a bag of salt and where they cooked all the peka and, you know, the lamb and the veal and all that under the bell. And when I said to the guy, oh, you smoke your own salt? He said, no, just sit in the corner, get smoky. You know, you know, we worked with Charlie Costello when he was at Pielago Estate, and we created the smoked salt with Alex Olson, the red gum smoked salt. So I sort of had this vehicle that I could do anything, and I sort of got to the point one day at Bridge Room where I was just, fuck it, I'm just going to do what I can do, and that's what I did. And that's when we sort of got our third hat, and I won Chef of the Year, and it was just a time. It's just a time where, I don't know, things align, you have confidence. I mean, I used to question every day what we were doing. I had an amazing team of people, the amount of people that went through there. Some hated it, some loved it. It was a hard kitchen. We had no cool rooms. It was, you know, 3 meters by 11 meters, including dishwashing and plate storage and everything. It was hard. No, you know, it was a front door. Everything came in and out. But I made my ceramics for there, and we created something, I think, that was different for Sydney. Some complained that we didn't have tablecloths, a fine dining restaurant. And it was like, fuck, now we're a fine dining restaurant. I don't want to be a fine dining restaurant. I just want to be a neighbourhood restaurant that had an a la carte menu. And then you win 2 hats and you have to do degustation. It's like, I don't want to do degustation. I just want to cook, you know. So I think, you know, it was a time where we just did what we did. And, you know, Sonny's not a restaurateur, so Sonny used to run the business. We had great restaurant managers over the years, but for me it was always the stepping stone. It was hard work. It's physically hard. I'm 50 now, and it was hard. It was hard on my body, hard on my knees, hard on my mental health. Small restaurants are just hard. And you don't make any money. You absolutely don't make any money. I can tell you that for a fact.
With the successes that you had and the fact that you felt as creative as you've ever been, was it hard to let go of the Bridge Room?
No, it was very easy. I had to come back to Sydney and either just disappear into hotel land, or I had to make a statement. and be a player. If you're not a player in this city, in our business, for me personally, it's not worth it. I'm not going to work that hard and not be a player. So how do you be a player? How do you become a player? You have to do something significant. And the critiques, not the food critics, the customers. Everyone is a food critic today. Everyone has an iPhone, an opinion, and a platform. So TripAdvisor is our food critic. The newspapers are, the publications, the podcasts, the Instagram is our critic today. So we've never had it harder in our business. We are public. We are out there, and every plate of food that you put down, you can potentially be open up to any sort of criticism. I mean, I used to get criticised for not being in the restaurant, but I was doing MasterChef. So it's like, well, he's doing MasterChef. Oh yeah, but I came here, and I'm paying my money. He should be here, and that's what you get in a restaurant that has an open kitchen. But Woodcut as a concept had been, we'd already developed the idea. We'd printed a 40-page book of it, and I was trying to do it. I thought Australia, there's no vehicle for it here in Australia. Who's going to have 1,000 square metres? It's going to cost a fortune. I don't have the resources. We'd spoken to Leon about doing it. We'd looked at a couple of sites. I'd spoken to people in LA, Hong Kong, Singapore, a friend in New York. We'd flirted with the idea of Tokyo. But we'd had this book, and at the time, John Alexander, who was the chairman of Crown at the time, used to dine at the Bridge Room a lot. And we sat down one day, and I never realised that John was probably interviewing me over the course of 6 months, but he would ask me sort of individual questions and, you know, about revenue and about groups in Sydney or Australia, and what do you think and what's your opinion, and what do you think about IPO of restaurant companies and all that sort of stuff. And I that was my world. That was my world in Amman. And so I understood that side of the business. And they called one day and said, do you want to have a chat? And they said, we're doing something in Sydney. And do you have an idea about doing something big? And I said, well, hold on a sec. I gave them the book. And I think they got to about the third page of the book, and Crown at that time for me was a very, very big company. It suddenly became an extremely small company. We dealt directly with John, and who was obviously James's voice in Australia, and Peter Kreenis, CEO of Crown Hotels and Resorts, and I'd sort of known Peter from Hyatt days, and it was in some ways it was very quick. And we're probably very bullish. I went in and I said, we want to be on the ground floor. We want to be on the water. I want to choose my own architect. I have a very specific idea. It's going to be 4 kitchens, yada, yada. And Sonny walking out of the meeting going, you need to think about how you express your requests, your requirements. But, you know, Sonny and I are a team. We've done big projects, and I think this for me is now this is what we've been training for. This is what we've been traveling for. This is what we've been giving up our time for. This is what the compromises have been for. And Woodcut for me it's just the dream restaurant. And I'm not just saying that I've thought about this for a long, long, long time. You know, it's very considered. For me, I'd given up on the idea of entree, main course, dessert as a concept for a restaurant. I think it's look, there's a lot of chefs who listen to this podcast. I'm not going to say it's done, but for me, it was done. For me, it was done because it traps me. I was building a trap for myself, saying, how many entrees? Do we have 8? Do we have 10? Do we have 12? Fuck, how many seafood is there going to be? How many meat? What about the vegetarians? So I'm like, it's all pissing me off. And for the people who know me, I get pissed off pretty quickly. And to resolve that, I had to change my view of what I wanted my restaurant to be. And so for me, it was the cooking methods that really have always sort of been there in the back of my mind. Wood ovens, ash grills, steam kettles. The wood ovens, Sonny's predominantly vegetarian, so there's a big vegetable counter. And now I take an ingredient and I say, to my head chefs, what are we doing with this? Where's this going to sit best? In the steam kettles, what do you think? What about the wood oven? Let's grill it. So let's try. Let's take it and put it into 4 different methods and let's see what comes out of that. And that, for me, this is some of the most exciting cooking I've done. I have the refinement of what the Bridge Room taught me. I have what I burning celeriac, and the chef's about to throw it in the bin because I'm like, fuck, you burnt all the celeriac. I said, grill it and put it in the staff salad. They burnt the shit out of it. Instead of throwing it out, I said, no, give it here. I said, I like the smell of it. So we cooked it with some verjus and blended it with loads of butter, and there we had it, burnt celeriac puree. So those are the things that, for me, that was the Bridge Room. I was teaching myself. I was training myself. I was learning how to cook again. And I was lucky in a sense that the public went along with that journey, and actually some of the shit that we served at the Bridge Room, I shouldn't say that, some of the food that we served at the Bridge Room, I look back now and go, Jesus Christ, what was I thinking? But you have to do that. You have to go on that journey. Well, me personally, I had to do that. I had to learn how to cook again. And I think for young chefs who are listening to this, go to the fish markets. If you don't have it in your restaurant now, you have to teach yourself. You are responsible for teaching yourself. It's not on the people you work for, the restaurants you work in, or you are responsible to do that. And I really believe that. And I give my chefs homework. One of the chefs said the other day, we were talking about something. He said, what is that? And I said, write it down and go and find out what it is. I know what it is. My chefs know what it is, but you don't. So that's your homework. When you know it, come back tomorrow and tell me what it is. And those are the things that I sort of task my chefs with every day, is like, you have to educate. So in Woodcut, we have very little storage, but I have a bookshelf that is, 5 shelves, and I put all my books there, and any chef can take a book and borrow it like a library. Because I said, no, you are responsible. I can teach you what you learn in the restaurant, but this is a busy restaurant. We are there to help, we are there to educate, but I'm not your sole tutor of what you need to get out of your career. If you need to understand food costs, business side of it, that will come, and we can teach you that. And we have succession planning for our management team, and to employ 150 people in this current environment. Everyone has their spot and everyone is there for a reason, but we are a business that is growing as well. And out of COVID and out of all the challenges that we've all had, we are a success story, which is fantastic for me. And, a lot of people think I have a crystal ball that, I moved overseas at the right time after the Olympics because I saw the writing on the wall. No, I didn't. I got offered a job in Singapore. People said, you closed the Bridge Room right before COVID. What a genius. I said, no, AMP was being demolished. That was my COVID. I lost a shitload of money because of that. So no one, I think, in this industry has a crystal ball. I certainly don't. All I know that for Woodcut, it's the restaurant that is all about my 30 years I've been in this business.
This episode of Deep in the Weeds is proudly supported by Olsen Salt, makers of Australian sea salt since 1948.
We take the seawater from Great Australian Bight and then we store it in something called a primary pond. Then it's fed through a succession of ponds from anywhere between 8 months and 2 years until it gets so heavy in brine and the water is evaporated off, the salt starts to fall out of the water, and it's as simple as that. That's all that we do, and then we wash it in seawater and package it. Hi, I'm Alex Olsen from Olsen Sea Salt. Salts all over the world can taste differently, and that's because salt has character, in the same way that a wine has character from where it's grown. So salt from the Eyre Peninsula has a very fresh, clean, crisp flavour that some of the best chefs in Australia appreciate. Eyre Peninsula is a really remote location, and because it's remote, it's considered a very pristine area. I mean, the next landfall is the Antarctic, and that pristine water makes it a perfect place to make sea salt.
For more information, go to olsons.com.au. Well, there's a lot of personal touches in the restaurant. What are some of your favourites?
Oh, look, Rod for sure is my architect, and I'm probably Rod's worst client because I am a frustrated architect, designer. I don't believe in boundaries, as I think you've probably understood in the last hour that we've been talking. I don't feel that my area there's a line where I should not cross. I cross every line because I think you get a better result. So I'm very vocal. I limit the architects on the materials because I think it makes them work harder. And so in this project, it was steel, oak, stone, everything that's tactile, everything natural materials. There is definitely the DNA of the bridge room. It wouldn't be that. I couldn't let Rod just go off and design a restaurant for us. So it's designed around the operation. The operation is never going to be compromised because of the design. But in saying that, it has to be special. And I think in our business, we're in the entertainment business. People want to be entertained. They want to sit at a counter. And someone said to me, never open a restaurant that is everything to everyone. I completely disagree with that. We are everything to everyone. If you want to come in, sit at a counter or be in a private room, be out on the terrace, be in the bar, you have to. Today, businesses have to be agile and flexible and not have any reason why someone can say, I can't go there because of that. It just limits your opportunity to fill seats, and obviously restaurant seats only get filled. You can't fill them yesterday; they're gone. It's like airplanes. So we have to have an offering. And for me, I actually pinch myself often, thinking, how the hell did I get away with this? How did I, first of all, be asked, get chosen, get to actually do it? This is a restaurant totally dreamt up, and you actually get to, push it across the line. And now we have to operate it, and you have to operate it for a long time. So it has to work, and you have to be happy with it. And I pushed our architects every inch of the way. And, the ceiling, for people who haven't seen the restaurant, we made a ceiling out of charcoal, and Rod had done something else. And I said to Rod, look, it's just not working for me. And I said, I've seen this image of the Giant's Causeway in Ireland where these basalt extrusions come out of the ground, and it's all this sort of articulated. And I said, why don't we do that on the roof and make it out of charcoal, and we could hide the sound attenuation and the speakers and the lights. And Rod's looking at me and I'm like, here, Rod, I'll show you, I'll sketch it. I start drawing it and let's do the steel. And, I love Richard Serra, the sculptor, and I've walked through one of Serra's installations in New York, and the idea that you just are transported. And I knew that the Crown lobby was going to be really special and very different to what we're doing, and I wanted people to walk into Woodcut and have it unfold, see so many different things. And I catch people, they're sitting there, and I said, are you okay? And they said, there's just so much to see, and the detail and the attention to detail. And that's, Sonny and I, we are ridiculously caught up in detail, probably to our detriment in some respects, but I don't know how to do it another way, and I do it the way I do it. And I think the Woodcut, like I said before, this has been, it's a journey that I never knew that we were really on until we were on it. And I think from a career perspective, I've I've never said no. I'm actually an incredible procrastinator. And I was saying the other day, there's so many things that I procrastinated about and never got back to someone who offered me a site that we could have opened a restaurant in that was fully funded, and I never called back at that investor that called me, and because I just didn't get there. And I think the procrastination sometimes, if I'd done those things, I wouldn't have done this. So I don't know. I can't say I'm this genius of planning or, gut feel or whatever. I don't know how it happens. It just happens. And, will I have another career after this? I don't know. Maybe. Who knows? Woodcut is now my focus. It's been in my mind for a long time, 15 odd years, maybe more. But it's a restaurant of many, many moving pieces, and every day it's much more exciting for that. So it's not I can't see the end of it. Sometimes I can see what it's going to be like in 10 years. I can't see what the end of Woodcut's going to be, and that's very exciting for me.
You mentioned the grand size of the restaurant and the 4 kitchens. Give us a sense of what it's like to experience the restaurant.
I think you come in and it's vast, but it's punctuated by the kitchens, and so you don't feel like you're in a dining hall. It's 1,000 square metres, so for those people who understand what that means, it's 300 seats. It's big. It's 100 metres. You walk from one end to the other.
Wow.
Senior staff are connected by headsets. I think we have 20-odd headsets in the restaurant at any given service, from the managers to the sommeliers to obviously the chefs. The 4 kitchens are all connected because you have to communicate. And I can't have 4 kitchens separated. They are separated, but they're not in my mind. They're all one kitchen. They're one team delivering a service. So if one kitchen is incredibly busy, one kitchen's watching them being busy. I can't take 4 people from that kitchen and move them over to the other one. So my role is to balance the menu, to make sure that there's enough interesting offerings from every kitchen that they can all operate at the same pace. And there's a bit involved in that, but again, it's also where do we put the duck? Are we going to grill that? Are we going to put that in one of the Romatovs, or are we going to put that in the wood oven? Well, look, that guy in the wood oven, he's only got 2 dishes. Let's put another dish over there. Okay, so how are we going to process that? I don't know, boys. You need to work that out, but the duck is going to go in the wood oven. So then Daniel and Twan, my head chefs, they go away and they, so this restaurant for me is I don't worry about the wall that needs to be painted. I don't worry if the air conditioner's broken. I don't worry about the stain on a chair. I don't worry about the reservations. I go in and I focus on the things that I'm really passionate about and the things that interest me, and that's the luxury of Woodcut. I can look at every kitchen and think, okay, new seasons, there's ingredients coming, where's that best going to be suited, and how's that going to, what operating equipment are we going to use for that, and what's the best way of delivering that. We just put a spaghetti squash thing on the menu the other day, and I love spaghetti squash, but I've never been able to really serve it in the way that I wanted to, and now I can say, great, let's do it in the wood oven, let's brush it with fermented butter, put parmesan with it, all that stuff. We can just say to the guys, okay, this is what I want, go away, I'll come back tomorrow and we'll play with it 4 different ways, and it's great.
You mentioned how hard you worked and how tired you were at the Bridge Room with such a small site. How are you feeling personally now running Woodcut compared to then?
I had a year off a sort of a forced year off. We closed the Bridge Room. I still have a hotel consultancy business, so I had no income after we closed the Bridge Room. So like I said, my COVID started a bit before COVID. So I had to race to find work. Most of my work was in Melbourne. I used to go to Melbourne for 3 days a week. It's hard when you've got a young child as well. We have a 5-year-old daughter. And I was in Melbourne 3 days a week. I'm working on a hotel in Melbourne, a 350-room hotel for a New York-based company. I was helping Fender Castellides, who were the architects for Mona. David Walsh is doing a hotel in Tasmania. So I was facilitating some of the planning with the architects in Melbourne. We're doing 5 projects on the Great Ocean Road for another architecture firm. I helped Adrian Finney do the Como in Perth. So I've always had things on that I could sort of find an income. And to be honest, if Crown hadn't happened, we probably would have gone back overseas again. That was probably the intention. Then COVID hit. And so COVID sort of was my work dried up in Melbourne. There was some that kept going because it was architects who were working, investors who were still in their planning processes. So I could work from home and do all that sort of stuff. And I was also working on Woodcut. But it also gave me time, with Bronte. She was reading. She was learning to read, to write. I took the training wheels off her bicycle. I remember her, getting on a boogie board in the ocean and all the stuff that probably, if I'd been at the Bridge Room, you would have missed out on. And it gave me, I lost 15 kilos. I started training, went to the gym, stopped drinking, stopped eating, stopped living, ridiculous restaurant hours. I knew I had to be mentally and physically fit for Woodcut. COVID in many respects helped with our staff because a lot of chefs that were overseas had to come back to Australia because the restaurants in London, Singapore, Hong Kong, they were all closing and they were expatriates and their visas weren't being reissued as happened in Australia for people who were foreign that had to go home from Australia. So we had an incredible amount of applications for Woodcut. Off the charts. We interviewed 500 people. So in many respects, it was hard because a lot of people were looking to us for security, for employment. And I was listening to your podcasts and really listening to how hard people were going through their COVID experiences. And I felt really bad because for us, it was actually helping us recruit people. So that is something that has also been really challenging, is as much as, we're trying to launch something in a time that is incredibly difficult. And there were delays and, there were a lot of things that were not coming into the country. We did have no idea of how we were going to launch a restaurant with the seating requirements and masks and so forth. And everything changed. And, the world has changed, and we're all dealing with what it's all going to look like. No one can really tell, I don't think. And the fact that we're doing currently 400 people a day, it's an incredibly busy restaurant. Tells me that too. And we're not the only one that's busy. The whole precinct's busy, but that just means that people are just dying to get out, see things, see new things, and we are a city of people that always seem to want something new. And it's opening Woodcut has, I suppose, given me the opportunity to do something in a very, very tough environment, incredibly tough environment, and I'm very humbled and thankful for that.
Well, Ross, it's extraordinary to take the deep dive into your life and the key moments and what you're doing now at Woodcut. Absolutely extraordinary. We've loved having you on Deep in the Weeds today. Please keep in touch.
Sorry, it's taken me a year, Huck. I know. You asked me a year ago.
Well, what's good to hear that you've been busy. I have been hassling you for a little while to come on the show, but it's been bloody worthwhile, mate. It's extraordinary to hear your story, and no doubt there's much more to it as well. So I think I'd love to catch up again sometime down the track as well, and see how you're going.
Maybe in a year. we might have another woodcut. So let's see what happens.
Brilliant. Ross, mate, keep in touch and we'll talk again soon.
Always a pleasure, buddy. Talk to you soon.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we share the stories of Australia's hospo community, suppliers and producers in search of hope during this pandemic. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.